Welcome everybody to our weekly webinar and podcast. Now, I just want to kind of explain a little orientation on this stuff. You know, I'm reading publications constantly that I'm interpreting as how to help doctors figure out where to put practices. And so I always start off my week when I'm writing, what do the doctors need to know? And today is one of those things. I'm actually going to tell you who's going to win the presidential election. All right.
That's very exciting.
Are you ready, Mike?
I'm ready. Who's going to win?
It's whoever knows how to suck up most to people in the suburbs, not the big cities. The urban areas, they don't care about you. Small towns, there aren't that many to really make a big deal out of, but I'm telling you, everybody's moved to the suburbs and they're not happy, those suburbanites. And there's good reasons why that I'm not going to get into today. But if you want to know about where to put a practice, we have to find those characteristics, which I will discuss, that are mattering more and more to people, not less and less. And one of the things that is kind of ticked me off that I'm also not going to go much into is the media is simply not talking about any of the trends. They keep trying to say, oh no, this is happening in this major city and this is going on in this large town. That's not where the action is, guys. Talk to a realtor and they'll tell you the same thing. So I'm going to go ahead and share my screen because I've got just a lot to go through. I need to have the host enable the screen sharing function.
There you go. You're welcome.
So we had just that one time that I didn't wear pants and stood up, okay? It can happen to anybody. All right. All right. I'm kidding. All right. Now let's talk about, I'm calling this the future practice site Suburbia, or the survival guide for doctors. And Suburbia is everything right now. Now, by the way, I hope you understand there's a difference between a suburb, an urban, and rural, urban, and suburban are the divisions, but there's a difference between medium density and a suburb. Part of it is not only how big the area is, but who is in the area. So if it's a suburban location, it's going to have grocery stores and a mix of residences and employment. So kind of keep that in mind. The other thing is freaking all the demographers out is so many people have worked from home that it's the definitions that they've traditionally used on where to put a practice, where to put a business have changed. So let's go into this thing. Why am I saying that you need to think about suburbs? Now, please understand, urban areas back in the 90s and at the beginning of the 2000s, it was really urban areas, downtowns that were showing all the hot growth and all the development. And that shifted a lot because of COVID-19. But more than just it shifted, I got to tell you why. Now, since 2012, suburbs and exurbs, that means an area outside of an urban area, account for about 90% of all metropolitan area growth. 90% of growth. So what's really happened since 2012 is the real estate market in the urban areas has fallen through the floor. There are lots of practices that I helped organize in downtown Los Angeles, downtown New York, and I'm talking Manhattan, Queens, and Brooklyn. I'm talking about downtown Chicago that were really hot because that they wanted to put practices near where people were working. But it's been a long-term trend, not just because of the urban, the pandemic. People have been leaving the downtowns for where they work. Now, over 80% of the residents in the nation's 53 metro areas house suburbs. I mean, in other words, suburbs are where people are going and where they are. The suburbs have nearly half of all voters in the United States. Now, let me make sure you understand. I'm talking about small towns, not as many. Big cities, not as many. People have been going to the burbs. And not just any burb, or burbs that have easy access to other burbs, not just the urban areas. So it used to be the commute was the big deal. Right now, the urban commute has dropped off dramatically. So people aren't traveling like they used to get to work. As one political analyst put it, suburbs are the new Florida. You know, there's a lot implied in that, because it used to be Florida was the place that only old people went to die. It's where, you know, they could go to the retirement community, they could be in golf and tennis, and they didn't have harsh weather. But right now, suburbs or the burbs are really the new place that older people and younger people are going. And I need to make sure you understand that. Suburban practices, by the way, are not necessarily small or cheap. For a long time, there was a cliche that if you went to the suburbs, you're looking at a primarily general practice that only dabbled very rarely in specialty practice. But the suburbs have become a place for general practices to begin to develop and dabble in specialty services. So we got dermatologists who used to handle, you know, the acne and the rash occasionally, but now they're doing a lot more than they used to. Surgery centers have moved into the suburbs. So you're able to get a lot more done clinically than we've ever seen before. And it isn't necessarily a place for small or cheap practice. You don't go to the burbs because it's less expensive. The population increase has been urgent, very important. Now, doctor, your job is to find where people are moving and where they're staying in large numbers. It's the moving to and staying put that makes the investment you have in a location desirable. Now, believe me, I go way back when it comes to demographic analysis, back into the 1970s. And with my dad's development company, it was a building contractor and architect, we used to look things back in the 60s, and he would explain to me why areas were growing or not, and why they were shifting or not. Well, right now, the population increases are very, very important, but it's also true that the suburbs are not losing population. And get this, they're not likely to lose population. So people ask, should I buy a building or not? The answer is, at this moment, you probably ought to consider it, particularly in the suburbs, and probably not in an urban area, regardless of how many people there are near the practice site. That used to be the measurement as to why you would build a building. There are a lot of people working and living near the site. What we're finding now is so many people have left their working area in the urban areas, and they've gone to the suburbs and are sticking there. That's why developing a building makes more sense than it used to in the suburbs. Demographics and psychographics are determinative. Niche practices may be on their way out. Now, that may sound a little weird, but I need to explain something to you. Demographics is how many noses there are, how much money those noses make, you know, how old people are. So that's the demographics. Psychographics has to do with their lifestyle. So how are people living and how are they working is what we include in a psychographic profile. Psychographics are available primarily through our marketing report. So if you want to know what are the people like, what are they valuing, what clinical services are they seeking, and that's why the question of niche is covered, a psychographic marketing report is where you get the answer. So if you've got a lot of soccer moms or up-and-coming business people, those psychographic profiles are determinative. In other words, they tell you what's really going to happen and where things are right now. And you guys, if you're going to build a building or purchase a building, you really need to know the lifestyles of the people, because that's going to determine the viability of the practice investment that you're making. I hope I haven't lost anybody. But look, psychographics are becoming remarkably important in terms of long-term investments. That's what I'm getting at. Now, this is kind of interesting because it sounds like I'm getting very political. I'm not. I'm just trying to illustrate what's really changing in the population that's out there. Now, both cities and rural areas have become more politically monolithic. That really just means that if you go to a city, people are not going to have lawn signs for other candidates like they have had traditionally. People tend to say this is a Democratic neighborhood, often urban, or this is a Republican suburb. And people are not moving around quite as much as they were. Barack Obama won nearly 1/4 of the country's non-metro counties, meaning suburbs. 8 years later, Hillary Clinton barely won 10%. Now, what it shows is there's a separation of who's living where. And it's increasingly because people are living and working close together, the kinds of businesses that are found in one place are reflecting the politics and the lifestyles of the people who live nearby. Why? Because people don't want to commute anymore. And as they're living and working closer together, it's changing the political landscape within cities and suburbs. In the past 20 years, the Republican-leaning suburb voters has held steady at about 47%, Democratic leaners about 45%. Here's the thing I want you to be aware of. Who is living in the suburbs is sort of changing. We've had a parity for a long time, but it looks like that parity may be disappearing. Now, some people are saying, oh, Republicans are leaving the suburbs and the Democrats are all moving in. And some people are saying exactly the opposite. I'm not going to make a prediction like that because frankly, I'm not a politician and I'm not a market research with politics. But what people are saying is the burbs are changing their orientation. I'll talk about why in a second. The balance, I think, is undeniable that there's a shift, but everybody's asking, where are people going? Now, my assumption is that a lot of people are moving to the suburbs, and it's making the suburbs more politically conservative. Not that they're conservative, but that they're becoming more politically conservative because the traditional urban dwelling Democrats are saying, I don't want to live here. Now, is that going to affect your practice? And the answer is, yeah, it kind of is, because what people are valuing in their neighborhood where you practice is shifting. Now, what are the key issues that we're trying to decide on where to put your practice as we recognize people are changing? Here's a thing that is pretty much undeniable. I mean, people may not like it or they may like it, I don't know, but suburbanites are becoming increasingly deregulation savvy. When your mayor and your governor tell you you cannot open your business, it has one major result, and that is people say, screw it, I'm moving. And they're calling their realtor and they're selling their house and they're leaving. Now, suburbanites, regardless of political orientation, are saying we do not want to live in a place that is locked down. Even those places like Portland, Oregon, and Seattle, New York City, Minneapolis, they've got a lot of regulation, and the governors and mayors are saying, no, you got to stay right here and do exactly what we say. But a lot of people are saying, I'm not going to put up with that. I'm going to vote with my feet. Now, ultimately, you're saying, why are people moving? Well, because safety is becoming a bigger issue than it ever was before. Crime statistics are being sought by realtors and by brokers and by others much more than ever. How do I know? Because we're a vendor of crime statistics. Crimes against people, crimes against property are usually reported on a county basis, not a very small geographic area. However, and I'm talking about areas as small as a zip code, that's changing. So data is more granular than it's ever been about crime, and people are gobbling it up. And what it it kind of comes out to, people are asked when they order this data, why or do you want to know? And because people are saying, I don't want to get stuck in a mob if my wife and I are out in an open air restaurant. Almost daily, you're seeing those stories come out in which people, big thuggish looking people, are hassling those who are having lunch during on a street on a lovely day. I don't know why they're doing it, because it's pretty awful from their point of view for what it's doing for the image of the area that they're in. But mob rule is not popular. In case you wanted to know, mobs are not popular. Now, one of the things that people are saying, what have you seen that makes you think that? And you may think this is odd, doctor, because I'm talking to you doctors. You don't have any open air practices. It just doesn't happen. But people are seeing videos in which thuggish people are yelling at your mother and your father, but more importantly, it's your grandmother and your grandfather. And they're going, I'm not going to take that. No, I'm not going to have the people I love who are vulnerable go to a place where they can be accosted. And this is affecting where people are going. And they're saying, I want to go to a smaller town, lower density, or to a suburb where that is not going to happen. Economics and self-determination has become more important than ever before. And so people are saying not just where can I get a job, because where you can get a job is changing with work from home type strategies and the gig economy. But economics, where I can make a living and how much I have to spend on my housing and a business makes a big deal. Also, people are saying, I want to go where I am in charge. Self-determination is more important than ever. Now, when I say to people, hey, did you know that Idaho is becoming one of the fastest growing states in the country? Everybody goes, why? Idaho? Well, I mean, I know fly fishing is great and we can always go to look at the bears, but why? Because there's a fact about Idaho and Wyoming and Montana and Nevada and Utah and Arizona that self-determination is more important than it's ever been. They don't want to have a big city mayor tell them what to do. That is showing up in the polling as a reason not to live somewhere. People are saying, I want to get out of here, and that's why. Now, I'm telling you this, doctors, because when you come to me and you say, where can I go? I want you and your significant other to have discussed, are these things important to us? And what are the options and where we might want to go? Because I can actually tell you in a telephone consultation where within the area that you're looking you ought to consider going. Now, did you know that Arizona is a good example of that? Some cities are much more open than others to growth and self-determination than others. Cost of living is a key factor in determining growth. And I mean specifically housing costs. Housing costs are a big deal, big deal. I've said this in almost every podcast over the last couple of months, but guys, if you want to see a town that grows, you're going to find a place that's affordable. Cost of living really matters, and specifically the cost of housing. Taxes count a great deal in the burbs. Now, it used to be, it wasn't such a big deal because you're going to get hit with taxes in a big city or a small town or whatever. It was all pretty much the same. But right now, taxes have become much more localized, particularly sales taxes. A big city may decide that it's going to raise how much they're paying their employees or how much it costs to run a business. And so sales taxes are more flexible, or I should say very more. If we're talking about property taxes, that's an even bigger deal. So you want to know why Florida is growing? Georgia, Texas, South Carolina, they're growing because the taxes are dramatically low. Now, I live in Utah. I'm right next to Arizona. They are not that low, but they are not going up. And that is one of the reasons why people are considering those places. I just don't want it to get worse. But if you look at some of those states, and we'll mention California, Oregon, Washington as an example, Washington, D.C., those taxes are likely to increase, and don't even get me started on New Jersey and New York. Now, Who's going to win the election? I'm going to tell you, whoever understands living in the burbs best. Don't assume it's a Republican or a Democrat, but I'm telling you, from a public policy standpoint, who's going to win is where people understand where the new growth is. I don't care what their political party is. I'm going to tell you, whoever wins is going to know the burbs. Who knows better, Biden or Trump? Now, there are some people who are saying that Biden is more tied to big city government and therefore is likely to increase taxes much more. I don't know if that's true or not. I don't know if Trump is going to be resistant to increases in taxes. I don't know. But I'm going to say who knows more is an issue. Now, some people talk about Madison Avenue, the advertising world, or Main Street, who understands economies that way. Right now, the burbs are run mainly on Main Street. All of the advertising you see is on Madison Avenue. What we're seeing is a disconnect. For the first time in a long time, people are disagreeing on Madison Avenue versus Main Street. And Main Street seems to be winning. Now, I'm going to tell you a little odd thing. Sports teams have always been kind of a blue-collarish thing. You know, who's the best basketball team, best baseball team? Football certainly has been that reflection. Not anymore. Because teams have been so politicized, a lot of people are saying, I don't want to move near a city or be associated with a city where there are all those people who are voting and have a lifestyle against what I like. And that seems to matter. I don't know if you know this or not, but the movies are run out of blue states. And those people who are funding movies may or may not have the same sensibility of people in the burbs. But I will tell you, people in the burbs are voting with their feet in terms of what they're buying, what they're watching on sports, and what they're watching in their entertainment. Now, here's the other last little thing. Everybody's concerned about, are schools going to open or not? And there's been a threat by the teachers' unions that they will not open schools unless they get certain concessions, higher pay, more taxes, close down charter schools, whatever. And what's happened is a lot of people are saying, if the school district is going against me, I'm not moving my family to where that school district is having a major impact. So ultimately it comes down to this. White flight was something that happened in the 60s when busing was telling people you had to put your kid on a bus and send them far away every day to school to get racial equality. Well, right now people are saying, look, my school district is broken. It sucks. It's violent. They're teaching my kids things I don't like. Does that have an effect upon where people live? And the answer comes in, yeah, it's having a big effect. And it's having an interesting effect upon the distribution of voters of a certain persuasion to say, I want this to reflect my values. Now, who is moving to the suburbs? Millennials, first and foremost, people in their mid-20s to late 30s are the ones who are moving most to the suburbs. That shouldn't surprise anyone. These are the most likely people to have children. But they're the ones who are like, get me out of here. And you may say, oh, well, they're all white voters. No, 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 no. Black, Asian, and Hispanic people are the ones who are moving to the burbs in even greater majorities than the white population. So some people will say, I don't know if I feel comfortable being of a different race or ethnicity that, you know, it's non-white. Look, I'm going to tell you something. They're moving there already. And if you look at any of the large states like Florida and Texas, you're going to notice the minority population has already increased. We've got to get this out of our heads that the suburbs are white. There are a lot of white people in the suburbs. I don't want to lie about that. But the thing is, they're not exclusively white. And they're pretty much used to people who don't look or sound like they do. We're also seeing another trend that demographers are seeming to ignore, and I don't understand why, and that's multi-generational housing. Look, when you saw those videos of older people getting screamed at by protesters, and those people looked threatening, That makes a lot of older people say, I'm not moving to the to big cities. I want to move to the suburbs with my grandchildren and children. I'm getting out of here. And I'm going to tell you, that's having a major effect. They're looking for low crime, low cost, good schools, close to work. Nothing new, but the way you define what is low cost or reasonably low cost, what is actually a good school, and a lot of people are looking at charter and private schools as never before, and also that is close to work, in other words, where I can telecommute, that's making the difference. Now here's a problem, and this is not a small thing. I'm almost wrapping up, so just stick with me. The woke crowd hates suburbia. They don't like it. They want to destroy it. They talk to their mayors and governors and they say, oh, we don't like the burbs. I don't know why, but they don't. They also hate the idea of open spaces. They want to have dense population because they assume it's more earth friendly. It's more efficient. Now, I won't go into this here, but studies have shown that that's not really true, that the big cities are the biggest wasters of energy and also have higher crime, by the way. But the point is, they don't like the open space concept. They want apartments. I'm going to tell you something, that may be what they want, but it is not what people, regular people, want. And also they dislike the control of schools and cities. People are kind of don't want local government to tell the schools and cities what to do. They want to have a centralized policy. I won't go into what Melanie Phillips is writing on that topic, but I'll simply say it's kind of undeniable with the way the trends are going. So what ultimately, this is what people want to move to the suburbs for. And even though they may be politically one way or the other, the lifestyles are what they're moving for. And that's why I brought up lifestyles. Now, we have the flash reports right now, which effectively are a half-price demographic report. Take a look at it on our website. Michael explained a little bit about it. Our telephone consultations, for now, for this month, have dropped down to $175 for a half-hour consultation to tell you what is going on. So you may want to take advantage of that too. Now, Mike, anything you would like to say here?
Well, I guess I'm just really disappointed that you totally clickbaited us in the who's going to win the presidential election, and then you didn't make an official pick.
Do you want me to tell you who I think is going to win?
Well, yeah.
I don't know. I don't know. How am I supposed to know? I can only tell you what people are going to vote for. And I'm going to tell you, you can kind of extrapolate when a message goes so against what the voters want, voters are not going to be happy. I don't care what the talking heads on television tell you. The last people to listen to are people who have not lost their job or had it at risk during the lockdown. They're not the people to trust. Now you can extrapolate beyond that.
Okay. That was a very, you're a true politician, Scott.
Thank you.
That was a really great way to talk all around what we're really looking for. I guess we'll let you off the hook.
If I bend over this way, would that help you to get off my back a little easier? Sorry, Mike. Okay. Now, Mike, you got your, are you all loaded up then for the September marketing mastery?
Yep. So we're if anybody still wants to get in, they can go to the 6-week marketing training section on the website under training, and they can learn a little bit more about it. There are other resources as well, not only beyond this webinar, but also our Whiteboard Wednesday, where we have several free trainings on the website. Again, this is all under the training tab on drdemographics.com.
Mike, your last whiteboard was a crack up. I'm going to tell you something.
I'm a funny guy.
You're really, well, it's very entertaining, but so informative. I'm telling you, I don't know if anybody recognizes how good this stuff is. Now, of course, these webinars and podcasts are free. I don't know why. We should be charging people more.
We should.
Oh, whatever. We should. All right. Any other words of wisdom or comment, Mike, before we take off?
I think that's good. I think our time's out, and we're ready to go.
All right. Well, everybody, get back to work. Visit us, by the way, by phone at 833-424-6222. Just to let you know, that's our 800 number. Some people are saying, well, how come you don't have a toll-free number? We do. There you go. And thanks so much for watching. Bye-bye.